Aloha and welcome back to the Radiate Health and Wellness Podcast. I'm Christine D. Ross, and I'm grateful that you're here with me today because we're picking up right where we left off. So, in the last episode, I shared how food became my medicine, how the simple choices I made in my diet helped me heal, and how powerful food can be medicine. But today, we're taking another step down the path of my cancer journey. So, after my diagnosis, I started searching for answers to one of the biggest questions that haunted me. Why did I get cancer? And even more importantly, what can I do to prevent it from coming back? My search for answers didn't stop with food. That was just the beginning. As I kept digging deeper, looking for every possible reason I could have developed cancer, I started to explore environmental factors. So, one of my doctors, a holistic practitioner, looked at me during a consultation and said something that changed the way I thought about my health forever. He said, Christine, I want you to start looking at endocrine disruptors and limit them as much as possible. I remember walking out of the appointment thinking, endocrine disruptors? What's that? I'd never heard of them before. But being someone who loves to dig into research, I took his advice and started down that rabbit hole, educating myself on toxins and chemicals that could have contributed to my diagnosis. So I quickly found myself diving into the overwhelming world of environmental toxins and chemicals that can disrupt our bodies in ways we don't even realize. The scariest part, these toxins are everywhere, from what we eat and drink to the products we put on our skin and even the air that we breathe. So I had two choices. I could feel completely defeated, or I could take control of what I could. I chose to take control of what I could. It made perfect sense. If my cancer was due to environmental factors, as one of the possibilities suggested by my genetics test, then shouldn't I be avoiding every one of these toxins as a form of prevention? To me, this approach seemed much more natural and empowering than simply taking a pill. But I did it one step at a time. Because let's be real, trying to eliminate every toxin from your life is impossible. It's about progress, not perfection. When I first received the diagnosis that my breast cancer was estrogen and progesterone receptor positive, I felt like my whole world had just flipped upside down. My cancer was being fueled by the very hormones naturally produced by my body. That stark reality just opened my eyes to something I hadn't considered. While we can't completely control the hormones our bodies produce, we can control many of the external factors that affect them. And as I quickly discovered, the modern world is full of hormone disruptors lurking in unexpected places. I knew I had to take steps to keep my hormone levels in check, not just through diet, but also by reevaluating my entire environment. So it's funny, before cancer, I didn't think twice about most of the everyday products I used. I trusted that if something was on store shelves, it must be safe. But that diagnosis taught me that trust doesn't always equate to safety. It made me realize that protecting my health meant being mindful of everything I allowed into my body and my surroundings. One of the most eye opening revelations I had on this journey was the hidden dangers of plastics. At first glance, plastics seem harmless. They're convenient and durable and a staple in almost every household. So, what I didn't realize was that many of these plastics contain chemicals called endocrine disruptors, which can mimic hormones like estrogen and interfere with the body's natural hormone balance. Someone like me who had estrogen and progesterone positive cancer, this was a massive concern. I remember the moment it really clicked for me. I was reheating leftovers in a plastic container in the microwave, and suddenly I paused and thought, what am I doing? That plastic, when heated, was leaching chemicals like BPA into my food. And I had just learned that BPA and other chemicals in plastics act like synthetic estrogens in the body, fueling hormone imbalances that could contribute to all kinds of things: developmental problems in children, obesity, fertility issues, heart disease, and the very cancer I was fighting. I also started learning more about the different types of plastic and their potential hazards. Did you know that not all plastics are created equal? Well, I didn't. Turns out BPA, for instance, is commonly found in certain plastics, like those used in food packaging, and it can leach into the food, especially when heated. Plastics aren't entirely safe. When companies removed BPA from their products, they replaced it with similar chemicals like BPS, which could be just as harmful. These This realization was a huge wake up call for me. It wasn't just about finding BPA free alternatives, it was about limiting my exposure to plastics altogether. And the more I learned, the more I realized just how embedded plastics are in our everyday lives. They're in everything from straws to utensils to the packaging on the foods we buy at the grocery store. Even the receipts we handle are often coated in BPA. Every time we touch one, that chemical can transfer to our skin. So all of this was just so overwhelming at first, as you're probably listening to, being like, wow, that's a lot. But I knew that if I wanted to limit my exposure, I had to be mindful about reducing my use of plastics across the board. And the more I read, the more I realized how these small, everyday habits could have long term effects on my health. So I started with one simple change. I ditched the plastic water bottles and bought a reusable stainless steel one. And it felt good knowing that every time I reached for my hydro flask, I wasn't exposing myself to harmful chemicals that could be leaching from a plastic water bottle. So next, I swapped out my plastic food containers for glass ones. And at first I thought, oh, just one more thing to change. But I realized that the small inconvenience was worth the peace of mind. And to be honest, food really does just taste better when it's reheated in glass. But now I didn't stop there. I became more mindful about where plastics were sneaking into my life. Like plastic wrap, gone. I now use a beeswax wraps for food storage. So now you may be asking, did I banish all plastics from my life? No, and to be honest, I don't think it's possible anymore. But I do the best I can and make compromises where I choose. For instance, I still use canned beans because honestly, it's too much for me to soak and cook them from scratch with everything else I am already doing. And that's okay. This journey is about balance, not perfection. But the impact of plastics goes beyond our personal health. It also wreaks havoc on the environment. Plastics don't biodegrade. They break down into microplastics, which contaminate our soil and oceans. And these microplastics are ingested by marine life and work their way up the food chain, ultimately ending up on our dinner plates. So when I realized that reducing my use of plastics wasn't just protecting my health, but also contributing to the well being of the planet, I just really felt even more motivated to make these changes. Our personal choices really do have a ripple effect. When I first started my deep dive into potential cancer contributors, one area I didn't think much about was what I was putting onto my skin. After all, I had spent years thinking more about what went into my body rather than what was being absorbed through my skin. But once I began reading up on endocrine disruptors and toxins, I quickly realized that the personal care products I use daily, the lotions, the creams, deodorants, and even sunscreen, were just as important to consider. Our skin is the largest organ in our body, and it absorbs everything we slather on it. Think about it. If nicotine patches and hormone creams can be absorbed transdermally, so can the chemicals in our skincare products. This led me to ask myself, if my skin absorbs what I put on it, why not make sure it's absorbing healthy, natural ingredients? Before cancer, I used to slather on a strong scented lotion every day without a second thought, trusting that it was keeping my skin moisturized. I didn't think twice about the ingredients in my moisturizers or sunscreen. Like many of us, I would buy whatever smelled so good and promised to hydrate, firm, or protect. But when I started reading labels, I was shocked at the number of unpronounceable synthetic chemicals that were in even the most natural products. A lot of mainstream skincare products contain parabens, sulfates, and synthetic fragrances, which are known to disrupt hormones and even increase the risk of cancer. So one of the first steps I took was learning to make my own moisturizing creams. Now, this felt like just a natural extension of the swaps I was already making in my diet. So the process turned out to be surprisingly simple. I now create my own moisturizer by melting down cocoa butter, shea butter, and coconut oil. I mix in a little vitamin E and jojoba oil. Then I add some essential oils like lavender or rosehip or frankincense, really just whatever smells good to me at the time. And not only are these oils great for the skin, but also make the cream just smell amazing without all the artificial fragrances. So another swap I made was in sunscreen. So did you know that sunscreens contain harmful chemicals which can disrupt hormones and have been linked to coral reef damage? I mean, living in Hawaii, they're not even allowed to sell sunscreen anymore with these ingredients in it. And it just makes me think, if it's so important that it kills the coral reef, why is it still allowed in most sunscreens across the United States? These sunscreens work by absorbing UV rays, but in the process, they release free radicals into the skin, which can actually promote skin aging and potentially increase cancer risk. It's ironic, right? The very product designed to protect us from skin cancer might be introducing toxins into our bodies. After learning this, I switched to mineral-based sunscreens, which use zinc oxide or titanium dioxide to physically block out UV rays without penetrating the skin. Now, these safer alternatives don't absorb into the bloodstream and they protect just as effectively. But it didn't stop with sunscreen. I started reading labels on everything: shampoo, conditioner, deodorant, body wash, toothpaste, you name it. As I peeled back the layers, I was horrified to see how many toxins I had been using for years. Many of these products contain parabens, which are preservatives that mimic estrogen, sulfates, which can irritate the skin and scalp, and triclosan, an antimicrobial agent linked to hormone disruption and antibiotic resistance. So another swap I made was with my toothpaste. I used to just grab whatever minty brand was on sale. But then I learned that many conventional toothpaste contain ingredients and chemicals that can disrupt hormones and potentially contribute to antibiotic resistance. So I now use a natural toothpaste without fluoride or harmful chemicals. And I can honestly say my teeth feel just as clean without the toxic load. And it's not just cancer patients like me who are at risk. Research has shown that these chemicals can contribute to a range of health problems, from reproductive issues to developmental delays in children. For instance, studies suggest that phthalates can interfere with hormone regulation, potentially affecting fertility and even increasing the risk of diabetes. But it wasn't just my body. I realized that the products I was using around my home were just as important, from laundry detergents to dish soaps. So many of these household cleaners were packed with synthetic fragrances and harsh chemicals. Did you know that many of these cleaners contain ingredients that are harmful to our health? But companies don't even have to list them on the label. That was another wake up call for me. So I turned to natural cleaners, vinegar, baking soda, and essential oils. They became my go to cleaning products. And let me tell you, it doesn't have to be expensive or complicated. In fact, some of these DIY solutions are cheaper and more effective than the store bought ones. So my house smelled fresher, cleaner, and most importantly, I felt like I was just creating a safe, toxin free environment for myself. And on the larger scale, these chemicals also impact our planet. When we wash off these soaps, lotions, and potions, they go down the drain, enter our water systems, contaminating rivers and oceans. Hormone disrupting chemicals for personal care products have been found in marine life, leading to issues like reproductive failure in fish and other wildlife. So, by making small changes to the products I use, I'm not only protecting my body, but also reducing the chemical load on the environment. So, now let's talk about fragrances. As I continue to dive deeper into learning about potential cancer contributors, I began to realize how many toxins are hidden in plain sight. Before cancer, I never gave fragrances a second thought, but now I see them for what they are, hidden toxins. A fragrance is one of those terms that sounds innocent enough, but did you know that when you see fragrance or perfume listed on a product's label, it can actually be a catch all for hundreds of undisclosed chemicals? Many of these chemicals are synthetic and some have been linked to hormone disruption, respiratory issues, and you guessed it, cancer. One of the biggest red flags to me was learning that artificial fragrances often contain endocrine disruptor chemicals like phthalates. Now, phthalates help fragrances last longer, but they also mimic hormones in the body, interfering with the natural balance of estrogen and testosterone and other critical hormones. So, fragrances are seriously everywhere, not just in perfumes and body sprays. They're in laundry detergents, dryer sheets, fabric softeners, dish soaps, and even your so called fresh linen or ocean breeze air fresheners. I also learned that these chemicals are linked to more than just hormone disruption. Studies have shown that prolonged exposure can lead to respiratory issues, headaches, and even neurological problems. So I started looking at the labels on everything I use daily, and I realized how much exposure I was getting from these harmful chemicals. So I began to make just gradual changes. The one change I started with was giving up my beloved plug in air fresheners and room deodorizers. So I love the way that they made my home smell clean and welcoming and fresh. But I now realize that those fresh scents were coming at a cost, both to my health and the environment. So I remember walking through my house, just unplugging each air freshener, feeling a mix of just frustration and determination. These little devices, which had always brought me comfort, were now potential threats to my health. But I replaced them with essential oil diffusers, which smell wonderful and even have health benefits. So now here's the funny thing. Once I started excluding these items from my life, my senses just got sharper. Those same perfumes, laundry detergents, and air fresheners that I used to love, now when I smell them, they're just overpowering. You know how sometimes you catch a whiff of someone with a cloud of old perfume that seems like it expired years ago? Yep, that's what it feels like now when I walk into someone's home where an air freshener was just recently sprayed. It's like my body became more sensitive to these chemicals, almost as if it was saying, we don't need this junk anymore. So, another eye opening and challenging aspect of reducing toxins in my life came when I had to rethink how I cared for my yard. Like many homeowners, I used to spray pesticides all over my yard to keep the weeds at bay. It was quick and easy, just a spray, and the weeds were gone for months. But when I learned that many pesticides are hormone disruptors, I realized that this was a dangerous trade off. Chemicals like glyphosate, a common ingredient in weed killers, have been linked to cancer and hormone imbalances. For someone with estrogen positive cancer, the risk was simply too great. But giving up pesticides was no easy task. I quickly learned that keeping weeds under control without chemicals was far more time consuming. I found myself pulling more weeds by hand than I had ever imagined. But I was determined to reduce my exposure to these toxic substances. So after experimenting, I discovered a more natural approach, using a weed eater to trim them down, then spraying a mixture of high concentrated vinegar and salt. It works, but not nearly as effective or as long lasting as the chemical solutions I had been using. But still, I've come to accept that a few more weeds in my yard are a small price to pay for protecting my health. Beyond the personal risk, pesticides have a devastating impact on the environment. They don't just kill weeds, they also harm beneficial insects like bees, which are crucial for pollination. Pesticides seep into the soil and water, affecting entire ecosystems. By making this change, I feel like I'm not only protecting my own hormones, but also contributing to the health of the planet. So, as I continue down this path of discovery, I couldn't ignore the role of pesticides play in our food supply. What shocked me the most was learning that pesticides don't just stay on the surface of our crops, they seep into the very foods we eat, impacting our health in more ways than we realize. So, the more I researched, the more I learned about the concept of the dirty dozen, which you get to check it out. You can find it on the Environmental Working Group website, EWG, and it highlights produce with the highest pesticide residues. These are fruits and vegetables that are routinely found to have high levels of pesticides, even after being washed. So most of them are, think of if you're going to be eating the skin off of something, if it's been sprayed with pesticides, then you are consuming, eating that pesticide. So just a good general rule is if you can peel the fruit or vegetable and eat the inside, that's going to be better. Otherwise, make sure you're buying organic or finding something that's not on the dirty dozen. So now I know buying organic can be expensive, and it's not always possible to go fully organic. That's why I found some little tricks that help. So for produce, that I use a simple soaking solution of vinegar and baking soda to wash away as much residue as possible. But when it comes to grains like oats, flour, and bread, I prioritize buying organic there. So I learned that grains are heavily treated with pesticides, and not just during the growing process, but also in the drying process. So it's double dipped in pesticides. And unfortunately, you can't wash these chemicals out. So this led me to another big shift. I started making my own bread. It's funny, but when I make sourdough at home with just three main ingredients, organic flour, water, and salt, I realized how unnecessary all the extra ingredients in store bought bread really are. And it made me think, why are there so many additives? Could these pesticides and chemicals be contributing to the rising gluten intolerances and other digestive issues we're seeing today? It's something to think about. So, in addition to protecting my health, choosing organic foods is also a way to support sustainable farming practices. Organic farming is often more environmentally friendly, biodiversity, and reducing the overall chemical burden on the planet. And conventional farming practices can lead to soil degeneration, water contamination, and a decline in pollinator populations. By opting for organic whenever I can, I feel like I'm contributing to a healthier planet as well. As I reflect on my cancer journey, I realize that healing isn't just about medical treatments. It's about making conscious, informed decisions in every area of my life, from plastics to personal care products to pesticides. I've learned that the small choices we make each day can either support or sabotage our health. But what I've also come to appreciate is that the changes I've made are not just about protecting myself. Every time I choose a natural product over a chemical laden one, I'm also reducing my impact on the earth. The synthetic chemicals that disrupt our hormones don't just vanish, they end up in our water, our soil, and our air, as I mentioned before. And they affect the wildlife and ecosystems in ways we're only beginning to understand. And by taking small, mindful steps to reduce toxins in my life, I've learned that we can create a healthier future for ourselves and for the planet. These choices might feel small, but their impact is profound. Each of us has the power to protect our bodies and the earth by choosing wisely, one product, one habit, one day at a time. And as I share my journey with you, I want you to know this is my story, my choices based on what felt right for me. And I hope that it inspires you to look deeper into your own health and environment, to ask questions, and to make informed decisions that align with your body's needs. I'm not here to tell you what to do. If anything, I want to encourage you to do what I did. Go down that rabbit hole, educate yourself, and decide what feels best for you. And if you're looking for a place to start, focus on one small change. Whether it's swapping out plastic water bottles, switching to natural cleaning products, or making an effort to buy organic, these small steps add up. I may not have all the answers to why I got cancer, but one thing I do know is that being aware of these environmental factors and reducing my exposure to them gives me peace of mind. And if I can avoid some of these toxins as part of my prevention plan, I'm all for it. So, mahalo for being here today, for tuning in, for caring about your health. Remember, we can't control everything, but we can take steps to reduce our exposure and protect ourselves. And that, to me, is the most empowering thing we can do. So please stay tuned for the entire series about my cancer journey, where I'll reveal whether I've stayed committed to the whole food plant-based vegan diet, the challenges I faced over the past 5 years, the holistic choices I've incorporated, and how I found balance along the way. So now that you have a clearer understanding of environmental disruptors, I'm excited to share in our upcoming episode the ways I've learned to detox and reclaim my health. If you're feeling overwhelmed or uncertain about where to start, I would be honored to guide you as your coach. Together, we can tune into your body and carve out a path that feels empowering and sustainable to you. I'm here to assist you to implement the small changes that can lead to lasting impact in your life. I also encourage you to explore my books, Discover the Adventure of You, and Health Beings. Both were inspired by my healing journey and aim to create pathways to just love, healing, and forgiveness and wellness. So, Discover the Adventure of You will assist you in uncovering your values, beliefs, and authentic self. And goes through looking at your triggers, working through them, working through addictions, just so much in this book to empower your mind, nourish your body, and ignite your soul. So then Health Beams serves as your guide to illuminate the path to a healthier lifestyle and just really prevent disease through balanced living. So together, these books are roadmaps to radiating health and wellness. So if you know someone who is navigating a challenging health journey or might find inspiration in my story and messages, please share this podcast with them. You never know how far your ripple may travel in creating health and peace for someone else on their healing journey. And of course, I'd love to hear from you. Do you have any questions for me? Feel free to reach out and ask questions and share your experiences or reflections. You can connect with me anytime at radiate.hw@gmail.com or on my website, radiatehealthandwellness.com, on Facebook, Instagram, or simply by leaving a comment below. Now, before you go, don't forget to like and subscribe to this podcast so you'll be the first to know when the next episode is published. By subscribing, you'll stay up to date on my journey, future topics, and more tips to support your health and well-being. So much mahalo for joining me today. And remember, you have more power than you think, and it all begins with the choices you make today. So until next time, take care of yourself and radiate health and wellness in all that you do.